Hey, what is up guys, it is RB and Hardwire with a brand new video. Today I want to show you guys my latest $1,000 PC featuring a RTX 3070 graphics card and Intel's new Core i5 11th Gen CPU. Now in today's video, I'm gonna show you guys step by step how to put together this PC build in 2021, showing you guys all parts I'm using before booting the system up, testing out the gaming performance. And if you follow my steps throughout this video, you should be able to see these numbers in your favorite game with this PC. I will be detailing several games in greater detail after we completed the PC build. Now, all PC components you see in the video are linked up in the video description. Now, before we get on with the build, hey, my name is Robin, and on this channel you'll find PC building guides where I'm using both new and used PC components, testing out the gaming performance and helping you figure out what PC parts to pick for your next gaming PC. And so if you're interested in that, smash the like button down below and hit the subscribe button and bell icon to never miss an episode. Alright, so as always, let's kick things off by installing the RAM, CPU, storage onto our motherboard. And this here is the B560 Prime Plus from Asus. This is a budget-oriented ATX board, which is perfect for a $1,000 budget gaming PC. Now, Intel's new B560 chipset offers PCIe Gen 4.0 support, which allow you to pop in one of these super fast and super speedy M.2 devices in case you feel the need to pop in an even faster storage later down the road if you want to. Anyway, the Prime Plus has all the essential stuff you want on a gaming PC, such as USB 3 support. We find 2 M.2 slots, and all of this for just $120. So moving on to the processor, and we're going to pair the B560 with the Intel Core i5 1100 400F coming in at $176. Now this is a 6-core 12-thread CPU with a 2.6 GHz base clock and a boost clock of 4.4 GHz. Taking a quick look at the 1100 400F gaming performance, we see that the $175 processor is keeping up well versus the competition, making the 6-core CPU a solid pick for today's gaming PC. Now, I've seen a couple of comments asking if the Intel CPU is actually faster than AMD's similarly priced Ryzen 5 3600. This is an interesting question. Comparing the two similarly priced CPUs using the same graphics settings and system specifications reveals some interesting details. Gameplay smoothness remains almost identical for the naked eye, but if we take a look at the numbers, we do however find a slight difference in the 1% low. The 1100 400F manages to score a few more FPS per second, as can be seen, compared to the older Ryzen 5 3600. But as can be seen, the difference is really not that big. Now, installing the processor in the socket is easy. First, you want to depress the lever on the side by pushing it down while you push it out. Taking a look at the socket, we see that there is a notch here and here. This lines up with 2 notches on the processor. So you simply want to turn the CPU so these notches lines up. And the CPU should fall in nicely. Lower the clamp, and the CPU cover should pop off, and that tells us that the CPU is installed. For the CPU cooler, we're gonna use the Arctic Freezer Esports 34 Duo coming in at $48, and the cooler installment is pretty simple. Apply a little bit of the included thermal paste and position the heatsink over the CPU so that the 4 standoffs align with the 4 outer holes on the cooler. Then carefully secure the heatsink using the 4 included thumb screws. Tighten them until you feel resistance. And that is it for now guys. We're going to wait a bit with the fans until we are done with the power supply installment and the cable routing. So next we're going to install a RAM kit, and for this build we're gonna go with Corsair's Vengeance Pro RGB. As for speed for these, anything around 3000 to 3200 is what I recommend for most gamers, as these speeds typically offers the best price to performance. Anyway, I am using 3200 MHz. Now to get optimal performance, we're gonna put these in DIMM slot 2 and 4, so open up these latches, and as we can see they can only go in one way, and that's it. Now there's only one thing missing guys, and that is storage. This is the A2000 from Kingston with 500 gigs worth of space, and this will fit quite a few games, and if you do feel like you need to supplement this, you can easily add in a hard drive later on if you're running short. Now we find one of the two M.2 slots down here, so take off the screw here and then slide in the A2000 with a sort of a 45-degree angle, just like so. Now you can go ahead and secure it down. And that is it guys. Now we can go ahead and move our whole motherboard assembly if you like and install it in our case. And for this build we're gonna go with Phanteks P350A. This is a $70 mid-tower with two 120A RGB fans that can be addressed and customized to your liking via the ARGB controller buttons that we find at the front. Now the whole front is covered with these small holes, and these are creating excellent cooling over our components, and these small holes here guys are also double acting as dust filter, and so great airflow over our components. For expandability you can add up to a 360 radiator at the top, although I do recommend sticking to a 241. There is also room to fit another fan at the rear if needed. However, as can be seen from my benchmarks, temperatures does seem to hover around 60 to 62 C, and these are perfectly fine numbers. To get access to the interior of the case, we need to untie these two thumb screws. However, before installing the motherboard, we first need to install the so-called motherboard I/O shield. This thing goes in from the inside of the case with these circular audio ports located at the bottom. Now we can move the whole assembly into place. And we're securing the motherboard using the screws that comes provided by Phanteks. With the board installed, before we move on to the graphics card, now is a good time to connect the chassis cables that takes care of the front audio and the power button. So let's start with USB 3, and this is what this cable looks like. The connector is located at the mid right side of the motherboard. Moving on to the front audio. And this cable goes to the left side corner. Lastly, we have the front panel connector, and you find this one on the lower right side. With that done, let's go ahead and install the power supply. And for today's build I chose the VGA 600 watt unit with 80 plus bronze efficiency certification. Although I do recommend settling for 650 watt just to have a little bit of extra headroom. And don't worry guys, I've linked up a solid PSU in the description down below, priced around $50 to $60. Now make sure that the fan is facing downwards, then gently slide it into place and secure it. Braid the cables outside of the case so that they don't get stuffed in. Now we're gonna do a couple of cables and wiring before we install our graphics card. And first up we got the 24 pin power for our motherboard, and this one goes to a connector on the mid right side. Next up we got the 8-pin power for our CPU, and this one goes all the way up to the top left side corner. Now we can finish up with the CPU cooler, and for clearance purposes I recommend connecting the CPU fan to the CPU fan header before attaching them to either side of the heatsink. Now make sure guys that each fan arrow is pointing to the back of the case. And with that done, it is finally time to install our graphics, and for today's build we find a GeForce RTX 3070 GPU. This model is coming from Gigabyte called Gaming OC. It comes with 3 fans on a 2.5 thick slot cooler and a nice looking backplate. Now based on the new Ampere architecture, the 3070 offers excellent 4K and 1440p gaming performance. Although something that we do need to touch on is the prices, of course, where all prices on GPUs are basically upside down right now because of the graphics card shortage. Now we do hope that the situation gets better as we're moving closer to the summer, but yeah, it is a tough time to be a PC gamer right now. Anyway, plug in the graphics card and take these 2 dual PCIe cables and plug it into our graphics card just like so. And what is left to do is to whack on the side panel, and we have completed our $1,073 budget gaming PC. Let's fire up some games and let's take a look at what the PC performs like. So on your screen we are looking at the performance numbers that I gathered from today's build, and I ended up running 18 games in both 1440p and 4K resolution with graphics detail set to very high in both 1440p and 4K, and as can be seen, yeah, for the most part we are able to reach the magic 60 FPS mark. But let's have a look at a few of the games at a deeper level. First up we have Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Let's start having a look at 1440p, where I put everything at very high settings. This gives us an average frame rate of 77 FPS with 1% low at 57. Let's move on to 4K. This results in 63 FPS. Looking at the settings, you guys can see that I'm selecting very high settings with 80% res scaling. Next up is Metro Exodus Enhanced Edition. Let's start with 1440p, where I went all in and saw ray tracing as well as DLSS is turned on, where DLSS is set to quality. This gives us 81 FPS. Moving on to 4K, I decided to drop the settings down to high, and this gave us 104 FPS. Let's move on to Days Gone. At 1440p highest settings, you can expect 103 FPS with 78 FPS at 1% low. At 4K, I recommend dropping down the settings to medium, and that will have you sitting at 55 FPS with 1% low at 40 FPS. Next up we have Death Stranding, starting at 1440p high settings and DLSS set to quality, and with these settings we are able to get 156 FPS. At 4K we saw 97 FPS on average, again at high settings. Red Dead Redemption 2 is another popular and demanding game that I've seen a few of you guys been suggesting, and so yeah, let's take a look at that. Starting with 1440p, where I'm going pretty much all in, and this is resulting in 71 FPS. At 4K, I am using the same settings. We are seeing an average of 47 FPS, so yeah, you might have to do some fiddling with the settings here, but overall very good performance numbers. Again guys, all PC components can be found down below. We also now have an official Discord server for the channel, and if you want to become a part of the community, ask questions to me or just hang out and chat with other awesome people on the channel, please go ahead and join the Discord server today. Link can be found down below. Now watch either of these two videos and I will see you guys in the next video.